Okay. Well, I wanted to give a small introduction to ScalableOGo, which is a groupware server written in an Objective-C. And first a bit about OpenGroupware.org. This is a larger project which is well, more like a framework for building groupware servers. Pretty much like NoStep is a framework for building GUI applications. So we are focusing on building reusable objects for building such servers because the requirements for groupware servers are pretty different. So there's not just one groupware server which fits all, but you usually want to have different kinds of groupware servers. We have a lot of code, pretty large code base for calendaring and contact management. We have some simple document management stuff. We have a lot of protocol implementations. By protocols, I mean the protocols which are used between client applications like RSS feed readers or calendaring clients and the servers. And currently we have two implementations of groupware servers. So the first one is OpenGroupware, the regular fat OpenGroupware. It's for smaller work groups and has a pretty complex functionality. And the ScalableOGo, which is a bit newer, was I think started in 2004 or something, or 2005. It's a bit refreshed and has a different focus, which I come to soon. Well, again, as I said, OpenGroupware is not just for building those two implementations, but we really want to bring forward groupware standards as well, like for example Calendar and GroupNet. And we also do not want to reinvent the software. For example, we are not building LDAP software on email servers, stuff like that, because there are really great projects which already exist. For example, Cyrus for mail servers or Korea for mail servers. It doesn't really make any sense to replace those.
The ELAFAX integration is something recent.
Sorry?
The ELAFAX integration is something which...
Yeah, ELAFAX is integrated into the email system usually, so it's not really related to the groupware part, but it fits into the larger picture. As I said, it belongs a bit to groupware standards. We want to connect native clients, so we do not want to be a web groupware project. And of course, we want to use completely free software, so we do not use any non-free software in building the implementations, but it's all GPL or LGPL. So to get back to ScalableOGo, it's a bit difficult to explain because especially end users do not understand why there are different approaches are necessary. For example, FOSDEM has a lot of functionality. It's not really slow, but it's intended for a few hundreds of users, that's most. So you can waste a lot of CPU on doing complex stuff. In contrast, the ScalableOGo system is designed for hundred thousands of users. And to do that, you need to take a lot more care about processing power and storage speed and stuff like that. So we really shrunk the functionality to get a scalable server. So what does ScalableOGo do? It's really based on the standard stuff. So for email, of course, we use IMAP4 and just reuse the existing mail servers. And the address book and the calendar, which are integrated, are completely based on iCalendar and WeCard. So we actually store the data in iCalendar and WeCard. So there's no mismatch between native clients or open source native clients and the server. And it's also very simple. For example, in the FAT OpenGroupware, you can have records which are really interconnected. For example, if you have a company contact, you can assign those company records or the employees and stuff like that, and the system maintains a connection between them. But database-wise, this is quite expensive because you need to do the joins between the different tables. That's not possible in ScalableOGo. In ScalableOGo, a contact is always on its own. It's just a vCard which is stored in the server. So it's very simple to remove and very fast to retrieve and to store, but it doesn't allow those complex links between the objects. But as I said, a common problem in groupware is that if a groupware provides more functionality, like for example open groupware, the native clients usually don't support that. So this is why many groupware projects provide web interfaces, because they can do anything they want in the web interface. But native clients like Evolution or Contact, they are not easily extensible. So it's hard to add complex functionality, but they are the perfect fit for ScalableOGo because it just uses the same thing. A bit about the history. The ScalableOGo was initially developed for a large French ministry, which had about 60,000 users, which were to be supplied using that groupware solution, and they have had three basic requirements. First, of course, it would need to be scalable, because they wanted to host it on a small cluster, on a single small cluster, so in a central location. So they didn't have 1,000 groupware servers, but just one. They wanted to support native clients, Mozilla native clients, Sunbird and Thunderbird, because in France they wanted to replace proprietary clients like Outlook using open source ones. And third, they still wanted to have a web interface, but the requirement was that the web interface should look exactly like Thunderbird or Sunbird, like the desktop applications. And well, ScalableOGo was developed to meet all of those requirements. First, scalability. As I said, it's a very complex topic, but one thing is that regular database-based groupware servers like Open Groupware, the old one, or eGroupware, there are, I think, about 100 more. They usually have a single tables, database tables, for example, an events table, where all the events are stored, and all events of the system are stored in that single table. And of course, it's fine if you have 1 million events or something like that. It's fine for a SQL database. But if you have 60,000 users which have maybe 10,000 events each, it doesn't scale anymore, because you get tables which are huge. And so in ScalableOGo, this is solved because the middleware of ScalableOGo can distribute the data between different tables. And those tables can even live on different servers. So actually in the French project we had 3 backend servers. So you could assign user groups to the servers, and the data would be stored on different cluster machines. Then, as I mentioned before, it stores raw iCalendar and vCards. So it just takes, for example, if Sunbird writes an event into the server, it just takes the iCalendar and stores that as it gets the event. So it's very fast operation. It's just a single update in the database. And to support the web interface, we also have an index over that information. That's necessary because if you just store the iCalendar files in the database, you can't use SQL to perform queries on them. So, for example, if you want to show a week of events, you would need to parse each iCalendar file, and well, that's too slow. So we have a separate table which extracts the core information from these files, like start time, end time, and it's stored in an additional database table for fast queries in the web interface. So the web interface can say, give me the appointments of this week. The index tables can also be split. There can be multiple tables, and they can even live on different database servers than the content tables which store the payload. So it's very interesting because the content tables don't need to be on a very fast storage because, for example, they could be on a slow rate, rate 1 or something like that, which ensures integrity because it's the important information. Whereas the index tables, they can be reconstructed from the content. So you can place them on volatile storage like a solid state disk or something. If it breaks, you can just throw it away and rebuild the index from the content tables. So it makes a lot of sense. So it can be more aggressive in optimization on the index tables. Well, yeah, and third item, if you don't use the web interface at all, but the native client, they just retrieve those pre-rendered iCalendar or vCard files. So it's not like in other groupware servers that the iCalendar or vCards are deconstructed into database fields and need to be reconstructed to the iCalendar file on retrieval. We just store them as they come, and well, we just need to pull them out of the database and send to the client, which is very, very fast. Native clients, our approach was to push open standards. So actually we started out with group dev, which is not really a standard, but more like a convention we found with the KDE developers in 2004, I think. In the meantime, we have CalDAV, which is now an official standard. It's an RFC for something, I don't know the exact count, but it's a real internet standard and it's widely deployed. It's gaining a lot of momentum. For example, Google and Yahoo also support CalDAV now. CalDAV is in the works. It's also going to be a regular RFC. So we are very close in finally having real standards for groupware. And those standards are also supported by ScalableOGo. Actually, we extend some clients. The open source clients, which is very bad, do not support standards very well, unfortunately. So the CalDAV implementations in Mozilla, for example, do not provide all the necessary features. The address book cannot do CalDAV and stuff like that.
It's not possible to write.
I think in the regular, I don't know. However, we have plugins for those clients which add the missing functionality. For example, we have the CalDAV address book for the Thunderbird address book, and there are also extensions for the CalDAV connector in Mozilla. So it's actually the primary client for ScalableOGo. It works really well. Then we have a Thunderbird plugin, which is Thunderbird is a Java server which is used to synchronize mobile devices, like mobile telephones. And we have a plugin which directly connects the database. Because the database stores the iCalendar and vCard files, we can just push that into the Thunderbird. Well, because we support those standards, especially CalDAV, of course, you can use Apple icon for accessing the server. Well, you can even use a regular web client to browse the collections and stuff like that, which is also quite nice. Well, the web interface, as I said, it was a requirement that they wanted to have the web interface that it looks exactly like the native clients. Now, the native Sunbird isn't very beautiful. It's actually quite ugly, but the web interface looks exactly like that. So people often ask us why the web interface looks so ugly. It's just because the Mozilla interface looks so ugly. It's also very scalable because we do a lot of HTTP checks inside the web interface. HTTP is actually a very scalable protocol and has a lot of features to support scalability. One is the e-tag. The e-tag says whether a web page changed in the meantime. For example, if the browser gets an HTML page, you can send a small token with that, which represents the state of that page. So, if the browser tries to re-get the same page, he just checks whether the token changed. If it didn't change, he can pull it from its local cache or in-memory cache, so it's very fast. the same is true for proxies. You can, between the actual application server and the browser, you can put a proxy like Squid, or there are other proxies. Apache also has a proxy module in that, which can cache the information for multiple users. For example, the browser connects the proxy server, and the proxy server asks the application just once, and if another user retrieves the same information, it's already in the proxy, so it doesn't even need to be bothered with multiple users. And the thing where this is working best is emails, because emails in an IMAP server can't be changed. There's always the same. If you would change an email in an IMAP server, it would get assigned a new ID. So if you have an ID in the IMAP server, it never changes what is stored in there. So actually, if an email is rendered by the web interface, the HTML page of that email, which shows that email, it can be cached by the browser locally. So if it retrieved it once and the user looks at the same email a second time, it's already in the browser cache. So it's really nice. Well, some buzzword stuff. So ScalableOGo is REST, which is basically another word for HTTP, in my opinion, because well, it's a style on how to write HTTP services, and ScalableOGo is implementing or built around those web protocols, which use the standard HTTP words put, get, delete to read and write the iCalendar and record files. So, for example, to see the iCalendar in the web browser, you can just enter the URL to that iCal file, and instead of adding a .html, you add a .ics, and then you get the iCalendar representation directly pulled out of the database. That's pretty nice. And well, even for email, you can. Even the web interface is built around that REST principles, or that web dot hierarchy. So you can actually use ScalableOGo as a IMAP HTTP gateway. For example, if you have a user, that would be the login name in the IMAP server, you can traverse the IMAP folder hierarchy and get to the email ID, like 123 email. If you retrieve that using an HTTP library or a web browser or whatever you want to do, you actually get the MIME which represents that email. And it's even better because the IMAP servers do not also have the facility to extract specific parts from such a MIME mail. For example, if you get a multi-part mail which contains a text and an image, you can actually address the image using a code. For example, that could be the image which is embedded in the MIME structure. And all the work is done by the IMAP server, so it's just a gateway. That's also how the web interface shows images. If you bring up the HTML page representing that email, it's something like 123.html. And that HTML page actually refers the part from the IMAP server, so it's really fast. It's pretty interesting. I think it's pretty interesting for a lot of different projects as well, just that gateway, because it makes it very easy to develop email clients, because it's much easier to work with HTTP than with IMAP, which can be quite complex. So where are we? Actually, we are very close to a 1.0 release, so it's 1.0 release candidate 9 was released last week. Actually, it's in production at a really large customer size. So they are, I think in Canada, the guys which do the main development, which is Inverse, they have about 3 customers, each with about 40,000 users. So it's actually deployed. Anyways, the final release will come soon. The development at this time is mostly done by a company called Inverse, which is in Canada, and they only do open source stuff, so it's not, they do not sell anything, so they're not in license business or something like that. They're basically a hosting company for large ministries and education facilities in Canada. And well, you can get the code at a monotone repository from Inverse directly or from Subversion. Every time there's a release like RC9, they push the state to the Subversion server so that we have a proper release history and a central server. So actually the development is going very well. We don't need that much help on the core server. But what we would like to see is more support for more native clients. And that's something I said before, the situation in open source clients and open standards is very bad. So we would really talk to Evolution, contact developers for improving that. Because we are mostly doing or helping with the Mozilla stuff, so this is a primary client. But we would really love to get some people on improving Evolution contact to support standards. Code internals. It's written in Objective-C, so it's real compiled code. You get a real daemon out of that, not some virtual machine file which you need to run in something which takes 10 gigabytes of memory and just drives it around. So, Objective-C is, some may not know, it's really part of GCC as well. You compile that, you get a regular binary out of that, and well, it's very fast, it's optimized. It's not as boring like Java, and it's buzzword compliant thanks to the iPhone. Because, well, the iPhone, I think, brings a lot of developers to Objective-C, because all the software written on that is written out in Objective-C, and so it's quite great. And I've tried to bring up a diagram of how it all fits together. It's basically the Objective-C runtime, which is coming with a GNU compiler. Then we have the GNU set base library, which is used by ScalableOGo, and for OpenGroupware, for historical reasons, we use a different foundation library, but those foundation libraries contain stuff like string handling or map tables and all the basic stuff. Then we have the Soapy application server. This is doing a lot of things. It's basically, well, as the name says, it's an application server. It does all the HTML rendering, but it also contains all the libraries which are used by ScalableOGo and OpenGroupware. For example, generating iCalendar files or parsing them, drawing weak views in HTML, and all the stuff. There's a lot of stuff in Soapy, and I would say it's about 70% of ScalableOGo, maybe even a bit more, because we use such a lot of the shared code. So, well, and on top we have the two applications, the one which is more complex and the one which is very lightweight and fast. Yeah, how you can reach us? Well, of course, using the website at ScalableOGo.org or OpenGroupware.org, and the mailing is for ScalableOGo sogo@OpenGroupware.org, and it's open to everyone. Everyone can subscribe. Well, and join us and comment and help us test whatever. Yeah, that's about it. Questions?
What's the status of packaging of the SOAP framework and of the PR component of the ScalableOGo? Because I carved myself 3 years ago installing the other OGO server, and all the compliance between the libraries of the SOAP framework and all the upper components was a mess with Debian.
Debian.
Debian, yeah.
I'm not sure they are providing Debian binaries, actually. I know that they provide YUM packages for Red Hat, but I don't know about Debian. So
there is something packaged for Red Hat.
But there's packaging for Red Hat or RPMs, and that's actively maintained by Inverse. I think they're using the same packages for their customer deployments, so it's supposed to work.
Yeah. No, I remember it was,
Actually, it's not that easy to build from source code because ScalableOGo patches a few things of Soapy. It's mostly because we use those different foundation libraries.
Could you discuss what is the role of this foundation? Is it disappearing gradually, or
well,
why are you holding on to it?
It's clearly the better library because I worked on it, but well, the lib foundation isn't really developed any further. It has, it's stable, it does what it does, and we do not put a lot of work into that to port it over to Lucid Base. But I think maybe this weekend, Sebastian is very active in that. Maybe he can convince Richard to
the big
work a bit
effort
more.
now is on the Scalable, not anymore on the Ogo.
The ScalableOGo is already using Lucid Base library.
No. So the big effort now on development goes on the left side.
Exactly. We basically would like to replace this with the Lucid Base library. The major advantage for OpenGroupware would be that Lucid Base library has better Unicode handling. So the foundation only really does isolate in one. So OpenGroupware is a bit restricted with foreign languages. For example, Czech or Polish. That's the basic advantage. Stability-wise, it's done. There are no major bugs in that, so it just works. But I think we will move to Lucid Base over time, but that mostly depends on the people who work on it. My motivation is pretty low on doing that because it works for me.
How lively is the community? Development community?
Well, how? I don't know. There's some mailing list. I don't know. Most of the work is my experience with Groupware servers is OpenGroupware and ScalableOGo is that a lot of people are not interested in doing that. So it's usually a small circle of developers which are also big businesses in that domain. It's not like there's some student which likes Groupware servers. Because it's a business application, basically, and it's very hard to get or build a community around that. But I think we are about 10 to 20 guys or something like that which are actively involved.
Can you tell us about the current status of CalDAV compatibility with different clients? Is it 100% compatible with
ScalableOGo doesn't implement all of CalDAV. In fact, I think no server can support all of CalDAV because it's quite complex. Most Groupware servers actually implement a subset which is required to host Apple icon. So that's
we get the FreeBSD.
FreeBSD is supported actually. So that's also an add-on for Mozilla, where Mozilla is extended for FreeBSD functionality with ScalableOGo. So it's not too bad. But my opinion is that people should rather use GroupDev because it's much simpler and you can actually implement that. And CalDAV can be pretty complex because you need to implement provisions and there's a whole bunch of stuff which is connected to that. But I'm doing a CalDAV talk tomorrow, so I can go to more detail in that. Yeah.
I have a question. So the database mapping, because that's the question of database mapping from the web server, is that still using TDL1?
Yeah.
Any pattern with TDL2?
No. Actually, we are not using a lot of that in ScalableOGo because the GDL, that's an object mapping framework for those who don't know it, where you can map database records to objects, and that's too slow for what we are doing here at that scale. So we are only using the adapter level. It's like JDBC or something like that. That's what we use in ScalableOGo, so it's no mapping stuff. We don't really need any features of GDL2.
I was thinking of a database backend.
because
actually, there are Oracle adapters for that, which are actively maintained. There's PostgreSQL. I think we have a lot more adapters in GDL1 of Soapy than in GDL2. I wrote a SQLite one, a MySQL one. What else do we have? We have a Citus one. I think pretty much any database. So font-based.
That's given by an abstraction layer on the Soapy server.
Yes, this is actually multiple libraries. So
that's
reusable code, and the GDL library is also, or GDL1 library is part of Soapy. But technically, the GDL is the GNU-step database library. We just imported a previous version into the Soapy application server, which was working for us. And GNU-step is continuing the development of the GNU-step database library separately from that. So we built like the foundation situation. We have a pretty stable GDL1 library in here with a lot of connectors and stuff like that, very well tested. And well, we could probably change to GDL2, but it doesn't buy us a lot at this moment because the stuff which is new in GDL2, it's not interesting for us because it's all higher level modeling stuff which we do not use. We need to go pretty much down to the database to get the necessary speed.
I think they have some things in GDL1 were stripped away from the original version in order to give more speed, like notification settings and stuff like that. It's all not any longer in the GDL1 code we have.
It's actually a modified GDL1, which we did some stuff which just makes it faster or more reliable. For example, our version doesn't throw exceptions. We remove all exceptions, but return just proper error code. So, because exceptions in Objective-C are always a bit fishy. I don't know. I don't trust them. Yes.
Is there a plan to make authentication against Calvados on the OpenGroupware server?
The regular one or the
regular.
No. I know that Inverse also has some deployments which actually use Active Directory as a LDAP service, and I think, but I know no Kerberos expert. I know very little about that.
On the OpenGroupware side, development is still going on, or now it's all?
Well, for example, Sebastian is working on the GNU-step base port, but functionality-wise, well, there isn't a lot happening more than
because the web interface of the OpenGroupware is, 3 years later than the Scalable. It's usable but now by some users.
Well, it's mostly a matter of time because the people I know are fine with the web interface, but the plan is, well, the basic plan for me was using the ScalableOGo interface and something which is called the site store server in OpenGroupware. The site store server does the iCalendar and vCard stuff for OpenGroupware, so it maps things to iCalendar and vCard, and it's pretty similar to what the ScalableOGo user interface does, so we could possibly reuse the interface and the other OpenGroupware.
I would like to have some fun with trying the Scalable, because the OpenGroupware one, the integration with the iCalendar and vCard,
certainly can be improved, that's true. Actually, I am also doing a Java project with OpenGroupware.
I hate Java.
So I actually implemented the whole stack from the fat OpenGroupware in Java. So there's actually an OGO-J now. But it only has a customized user interface for one specific client. But it uses exactly the same database. And it's also a modern user interface, but it's really tight. It's an internal information system for a pharmacy chamber, so they have pretty specific requirements. But maybe that evolves into a new OpenGroupware, I don't know yet. We'll see.
Integration with proprietary software is allowed as a question, or?
Of OpenGroupware?
Both.
Well, but a lot of stuff is LGPL.
My first question for the next question is, can I make some question about proprietary integration? Can I ask for Open Outlook? Is it integrated or?
Well, actually, I'm working for a company which does an Outlook plugin.
Yeah.
There's a new one coming, which is we used to have an Outlook plugin just for OpenGroupWare, which was using an own protocol to talk to the OpenGroupWare server. And we are just in the last 3 years we were retargeting that Outlook plugin to use CalDev and CardDev. So you can actually use that plugin with any server which supports CardDev and CalDev. So that's in the works, and we are close.
And you're going to sync all the calendars of mobile phones and stuff like that because it was not compatible before.
Well, mobile phones you could use Panambol in the ScalableOGo. That's working very well.
Okay.
But for OpenGroupWare you could actually it can be a so-called primary store in Outlook, so you can replace your PSD file with that store, and then you can even synchronize mobile devices with that. That's true.
Okay.
So it's much better.
Because I remember that the sync was going. You have two stores basically. The one which is your primary one of the client, and the secondary one which is given by the plugin given by you, but was not syncing because it was pointing to the first one.
Yeah, that's mostly a problem of Outlook because Outlook can only sync a so-called default calendar.
Okay.
And to replace a PST file, you need a so-called primary storage provider. And the old plugin couldn't be one. It was not complex enough.
The new one?
But the new one can be a primary store. It's reworked completely. Actually, you use a SQLite as a database, and you can take it as a replacement for a PST file. So
yes. I had a project in which we used OpenGroupWare to substitute completely Exchange, but
it's not.
yeah,
It's not possible. It's not the current plugin which we are now developing. It doesn't do email yet, so you would still have to. You have the primary store which does the calendar and the address books, and then you have the IMAP connector from.
Okay.
So it's one additional configuration. But we are working on that one.
Yeah, it's the key point to push it in the real business.
Yeah, but it's not different with Outlook in the general case. If you want a set of Outlook to use IMAP, you still also get two.
Yeah, usually if you have Outlook, you have Exchange. The point is to get rid of it.
Yeah. Okay. More questions?
Why are you working on the Java version? The version is so super.
I was expecting this question.
Well, in business. But because I'm also doing the work in Java, I can assure you it's much more awesome to work in Objective-C. So.
Yeah.
I know what I'm talking about. So, who's next?
I think we have a break.
Yeah. Oh, okay.